When billionaire Malachi Whitmore's autistic son has a public meltdown, a waitress named Zariah calms him in a way no one else ever has. One act of kindness ignites a bond that changes everything. But will Malachi's vindictive ex let it last? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Malachi Whitmore's penthouse apartment. At 32, he had everything money could buy: a tech empire worth billions, a luxurious home in Atlanta's most exclusive building, and all the power that came with being one of the city's wealthiest men. But as Malachi stared at his reflection in the bathroom mirror, he saw nothing but failure in his eyes. "Daddy," a small voice called from the hallway. Malachi took a deep breath and straightened his tie. "Coming, Eli." His 6-year-old son stood in the hallway, still in his pajamas, clutching a small toy robot. The boy didn't make eye contact, he never did, but Malachi had learned that didn't mean Eli wasn't aware of everything around him. "Nina says we need to get ready for brunch," Eli said flatly, referring to the nanny Malachi had hired after the divorce. "That's right. We have a reservation at the Grandview Hotel." Malachi checked his watch. "Where is Nina?" "Packing my things." Eli turned and walked back to his room, his movements precise and careful. Malachi felt the familiar knot in his stomach. 3 months had passed since Eli's diagnosis with autism, and he still had no idea how to connect with his own son. The divorce for Vanessa last year had been bitter in public, with her accusing him of being an absent workaholic. She'd left Eli with him not out of love, but spite, knowing Malachi had no clue how to be a father. And she'd been right. Nina appeared from Eli's room with the boy's backpack. "Mr. Whitmore, I've packed all of Eli's comfort items. Remember, if he gets overwhelmed." "I know," Malachi interrupted, though he didn't know. "Not really. We'll be fine for a few hours." Nina gave him a doubtful look, but nodded. "Call me if you need anything." 40 minutes later, Malachi guided Eli through the grand entrance of the Grandview Hotel. The 5-star restaurant was famous for its Sunday brunch, and as usual, heads turned when they entered. Some recognized the billionaire tech investor. Others just noticed his expensive suit. "Table for Whitmore," Malachi told the host. "Of course, sir. Right this way." They were led to a corner table with a view of the city. Malachi had specifically requested this spot, hoping the quieter location would be better for Eli. The boy slid into his seat, immediately taking out his tablet and headphones, his shield against the world. "Would you like to look at the menu first?" the host asked. "No need. My son will have plain pancakes, no syrup, no butter, and I'll have the steak and eggs. Coffee black." Malachi was used to efficiency in all things. Why waste time on menus when he knew what they wanted? The host nodded and left, and Malachi checked his phone. 3 emails from Japan needed his attention. A potential investment was showing promising numbers. He began typing a response, glancing up occasionally at Eli, who was focused entirely on his tablet. This was their routine. Together, but separate. Present, but disconnected. A different server approached their table. "Good morning. I'm Zariah, and I'll be taking care of you today." Malachi barely looked up. "We've already ordered. I see that in the system. Would your son like some apple juice? We have fresh squeezed." "He doesn't like juice," Malachi said automatically. Zariah Miles smiled warmly. At 27, she had the kind of face that made people want to tell her their problems, expressive brown eyes, and a gentle smile that put people at ease. Her black hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and her hotel uniform was crisp and neat. "What do you like to drink, sweetie?" she asked, addressing Eli directly. Malachi looked up, surprised. Most servers didn't bother trying to engage with Eli. The boy didn't respond, his headphones blocking out the world. "He'll have water," Malachi said. Zariah nodded. "Coming right up." As she walked away, Malachi noticed how she stopped at each table, making guests laugh, remembering their names. There was something natural and unforced about her interactions that made him stare a moment too long. When she returned with their drinks, she placed Eli's water in front of him, then gently tapped the table near his tablet. The boy looked up, and Zariah pointed to the water. To Malachi's surprise, Eli removed one earphone. "I brought you water," she said. "Is that okay?" Eli nodded once. "Thank you," Malachi said, genuinely impressed. "He doesn't usually acknowledge people?" Zariah finished with a knowing smile. "Sometimes it just takes the right approach." Before Malachi could respond, she was called to another table. The restaurant grew busier, the noise level rising with each new group of guests. Malachi noticed Eli beginning to rock slightly in his seat, a warning sign Nina had told him about. He reached for his phone to call her, then stopped himself. He was Eli's father. He should be able to handle this. "Eli," he said softly, "are you okay?" The boy didn't respond, his rocking becoming more pronounced. "Eli," Malachi said more firmly, "look at me." But Eli's eyes were squeezed shut now, his hands covering his ears even with the headphones on. The tablet slipped from the table, clattering to the floor, and that's when it happened. Eli screamed. It wasn't a normal child's scream of frustration. It was raw, primal, the sound of someone whose world had become unbearable. Eli slid under the table, curling into a ball, screaming and rocking. The restaurant fell silent. Every head turned toward them. Malachi felt sweat break out on his forehead. "Eli," he whispered urgently, kneeling down. "Eli, please." But the boy only screamed louder when Malachi tried to touch him. "Is everything all right, sir?" The host had returned, looking concerned but also annoyed at the disruption. He has autism," Malachi explained, the words sticking in his throat. "He gets overwhelmed sometimes. Perhaps it would be better if you took him outside," the host suggested, not unkindly, but firmly. Malachi heard the whispers starting. Can't control his own kid. Why bring a child like that to a place like this? Some people just want attention. Shame burned through him, followed quickly by anger. He was Malachi Whitmore. He owned companies worth billions. He destroyed competitors for less disrespect than this. He could buy this hotel and fire everyone in it with a single phone call. But none of that mattered now. None of that could help his son, who was suffering while he stood there helpless. Just as Malachi was about to scoop Eli up, screaming or not, a gentle voice cut through the chaos. "Excuse me." Zariah had returned, and without hesitation, she knelt down beside the table. "What are you doing?" Malachi asked sharply. She ignored him, focusing entirely on Eli. She began to hum softly, a simple, repetitive melody. "Eli," she said between hums, her voice barely above a whisper. "Eli, I know it's loud in here. I know it hurts your ears and makes your skin feel funny." The boy's screams didn't stop, but they hitched slightly, as if he'd heard her. "I'm going to count backward from 10, and with each number, the noise will get a little quieter for you," she continued, still humming between sentences. 10, 9, by the time she reached 3, Eli's screams had turned to whimpers. By 1, he was quiet, though still rocking. "Can I show you something?" Zariah asked softly. She pulled a small, squishy ball from her pocket. "This helps me when things get too loud. Would you like to feel it?" Slowly, Eli's hand reached out. She placed the ball in his palm, and his fingers closed around it, squeezing rhythmically. "That's it," she encouraged. "Squeeze and breathe. Squeeze and breathe." Malachi watched in stunned silence as Zariah continued talking to Eli in that gentle, understanding voice. She wasn't using baby talk or the overly cheerful tone most adults used with children. She spoke to him like he was a person having a difficult moment, with dignity and respect. Gradually, Eli emerged from under the table, the squishy ball clutched tightly in his hand. His eyes were red from crying, but the crisis had passed. "There you are," Zariah said with a warm smile. "That was hard, wasn't it? You did a good job coming back." Eli didn't answer, but he didn't put his headphones back on either. "Would you like to go somewhere quieter?" she asked him. "There's a small garden terrace that's empty right now. I could bring your pancakes there." Eli looked at her directly, actually looked at her and nodded. Zariah stood up and turned to Malachi, who realized his mouth was hanging open in shock. "Sir, would that be acceptable?" Malachi could only nod, following as Zariah led them through a side door to a small, enclosed garden terrace. It was meant for evening dining, so it was empty now, peaceful with the sounds of a small fountain bubbling in the corner. "I'll bring your food here," she said. And maybe some more water? Yes, thank you. Malachi managed, finding his voice at last. How did you? Zariah's expression softened. My younger brother is on the spectrum. Sometimes when everything gets too intense, they just need someone who understands what they're experiencing. She turned to go, then hesitated. He's not broken, you know. He just experiences the world differently than we do. After she left, Malachi sat across from Eli, who was now calmly squeezing the ball, his gaze fixed on the fountain. Do you like it out here better? Malachi asked. The water sounds nice, Eli said quietly. And there's no echoes. It was more words than his son had spoken to him directly in weeks. When Zariah returned with their food, she placed Eli's pancakes in front of him, already cut into perfect, same-size squares. I remembered you don't like syrup, she said to Eli. Is this okay? Eli nodded, picking up his fork. She placed Malachi's plate in front of him. Can I get you anything else, sir? Malachi looked at this woman, this waitress who had accomplished in minutes what he hadn't been able to do in months. Your name again? He asked. Zariah. Zariah Miles. Thank you, Zariah Miles. She smiled, and for the first time, Malachi noticed how it reached her eyes, creating small crinkles at the corners. Just doing my job, sir. No, he said firmly. What you just did was far beyond your job. She shrugged, seeming uncomfortable with the praise. I should check on my other tables. Take your time out here. No one will disturb you. As she walked away, Malachi watched her go, feeling something shift inside him. For months, he'd been throwing money at Eli's diagnosis. The best doctors, therapists, special schools, toys, equipment. But in all that time, he'd never seen his son respond to anyone the way he had to this waitress. Eli was quietly eating his pancakes, still squeezing the ball with his free hand. Is the food good? Malachi asked. It's the right temperature, Eli replied. In his world, that was high praise. Malachi cut into his steak, but he wasn't hungry anymore. His mind was racing with questions about Zariah Miles. Who was she? How had she known exactly what to do? And why did it make him feel both grateful and ashamed at the same time? When she returned to check on them, Malachi made a decision. Ms. Miles, I'd like to speak with you when your shift ends. Her expression immediately became guarded. I'm sorry, sir, but I have plans after work. I'll pay you for your time, he said automatically, then regretted it when her eyes narrowed. I mean, it's about my son. I'd like to understand how you knew what to do. She hesitated, looking at Eli, who was now drawing patterns in the condensation on his water glass. I get off at 3, she finally said. I can spare 15 minutes. Thank you. We'll be done by then. She nodded and left again. Malachi turned back to his son, who was now looking at him with those serious blue eyes, Vanessa's eyes. Daddy, Eli said suddenly, can I keep this ball? The question caught Malachi off guard. Eli rarely asked for anything directly. We have to ask Ms. Miles. It belongs to her. I like how it feels, Eli continued, rolling it between his palms. It makes my hands happy. My hands happy. Such a simple, honest expression of what brought him comfort. Malachi felt a twinge in his chest. When was the last time he'd asked himself what made any part of him happy? They finished their meal in the peaceful garden, and for once, Malachi didn't check his phone. Instead, he watched his son, trying to see the world as Eli might. The patterns of light through the trees, the consistent rhythm of the fountain, the predictable squares of pancake. At precisely 3:05 p.m., Zariah Miles emerged in the hotel lobby where Malachi and Eli waited. She'd changed from her uniform into jeans and a simple blue sweater, her hair now loose around her shoulders. Thank you for waiting, she said, approaching them cautiously. Thank you for coming, Malachi replied, suddenly unsure what to say. In business, he never hesitated. But this wasn't business. This was his son. Ms. Miles, he began formally, what you did today, I've taken Eli to specialists who couldn't calm him that effectively. Like I said, I have experience, she answered, her gaze drifting to Eli, who was sitting quietly, still holding the ball. My brother Jamie is 14 now, but I remember how hard it was when he was younger. Zariah, Eli said suddenly, the first time he'd used her name. Can I keep your ball? She smiled and knelt down to his level. Of course you can, Eli. I have others at home. It makes my hands happy, he told her seriously. I'm glad, she replied just as seriously. Sometimes our hands need to be happy when our minds are too busy. Eli nodded as if this made perfect sense. Malachi watched the exchange with a mixture of wonder and something else, something that felt uncomfortably like envy. This woman understood his son in a way he never had. Ms. Miles, I'd like to hire you, he said abruptly. She stood up, surprise evident on her face. Excuse me, as a consultant, to help with Eli. The words sounded ridiculous even to him. Billionaires didn't hire waitresses as consultants. I have a job, Mr. Whitmore. I'll double whatever they pay you. Triple it. Her expression hardened. Not everything has a price tag, Mr. Whitmore. Malachi wasn't used to being refused. Name your price then. You don't understand, she said, shaking her head. I can't be bought. Everyone can be bought, he replied automatically, then regretted the words immediately. She turned to leave. Goodbye, Mr. Whitmore. Take care, Eli. Wait, Malachi said, reaching for her arm but stopping himself. I'm sorry. I'm not good at asking for help. She studied him for a long moment. No, I don't imagine you are. Please, he said, the word feeling foreign on his tongue. My son needs help that I don't know how to give him. And you think I do? I know you do. I saw it. She looked at Eli again, something softening in her expression. I'm not a therapist, Mr. Whitmore. I dropped out of college before finishing my psychology degree. But you understand him, Malachi insisted. That's worth more than any degree. Zariah seemed to be weighing something in her mind. Finally, she sighed. I can't leave my job. I have responsibilities, bills to pay. What if you didn't have to leave? Malachi suggested, his mind racing ahead as it did when closing a deal. What if you could spend time with Eli when you're not working? I'd pay you consultant rates, whatever you think is fair. Why would you trust a stranger with your son? Because you're not a stranger to him, Malachi said quietly. He said more to you in 1 hour than he said to me all week. The honesty of this admission hung in the air between them. 2 hours, 3 times a week, she finally said, after my shifts or on my days off. And I set the rate. Done, Malachi agreed immediately. And no ordering me around like an employee. This is a consultation arrangement. Understood. She pulled a small notebook from her purse and wrote something down, tearing out the page and handing it to him. My number. Text me your address and when you'd like to start. As she turned to leave, Eli spoke up again. Bye, Zariah. She smiled at him. Bye, Eli. I'll see you soon. Malachi watched her walk away, the paper with her number clutched in his hand. He looked down at his son, who was watching the fountain again, perfectly content in this moment. Let's go home, buddy, he said softly. As they walked to the waiting car, Malachi realized that for the first time since Eli's diagnosis, maybe for the first time since becoming a father, he felt something close to hope. But there was something else too, something unexpected. The image of Zariah Miles in her simple blue sweater, standing her ground against one of Atlanta's most powerful men, kept replaying in his mind. Everything had changed that afternoon, though Malachi didn't yet understand how completely his life was about to be transformed. 3 days after the incident at the Grandview Hotel, Zariah Miles stood at the entrance of Malachi Whitmore's building, trying not to feel intimidated. The doorman eyed her warily until she mentioned her name. Mr. Whitmore is expecting you, Ms. Miles, he said, his tone changing instantly. Penthouse floor. The elevator ride to the top floor gave Zariah time to question her decision. Was she really going to work for a billionaire who thought everyone had a price? But then she remembered Eli's face, the way he'd responded to her, and she knew she was doing this for him, not his father. When the elevator doors opened, Zariah stepped directly into a massive living room with windows overlooking all of Atlanta. Malachi Whitmore stood near the windows, phone to his ear, looking every bit the powerful businessman in dark slacks and a crisp white shirt, sleeves rolled up to reveal strong forearms. He held up one finger in the universal, just a minute sign, and continued his call. I don't care what the board thinks. Either they accept our terms or we walk. Period. He hung up without saying goodbye. Ms. Miles, he said, turning to her. Thank you for coming. Mr. Whitmore, she replied formally. An awkward silence fell between them until a small voice broke it. Zariah? Eli appeared from a hallway, clutching the stress ball she'd given him. He wasn't looking directly at her, but she could tell he recognized her presence. Hi, Eli, she said warmly, kneeling down to his level. I'm happy to see you again. You came to our house, he stated. I did. Is that okay with you? Eli nodded, squeezing the ball rhythmically. I have more things that make my hand happy. Want to see? I'd love to. Without waiting for his father's input, Eli turned and walked back down the hallway. Zariah followed, leaving Malachi standing alone. Eli's room was a stark contrast to the minimalist luxury of the rest of the apartment. Here, everything was organized with meticulous precision, toys arranged by size and color, books perfectly aligned on shelves, and a bed with hospital corners that would make a military officer proud. This is my space, Eli explained, his voice taking on a hint of pride. Everything has a place. It's very organized, Zariah said appreciatively. You must work hard to keep it this way. Eli nodded seriously. Messy rooms make my brain messy. Zariah felt Malachi's presence before she saw him, hovering in the doorway. Nina usually helps him maintain it, he said. His nanny. Where is Nina today? Zariah asked. Day off, Malachi replied. I worked from home to be here when you arrived. Eli had moved to a small table where several fidget toys were lined up perfectly. These all make my hands happy, he explained to Zariah. But yours is my favorite. I'm glad, she said, genuinely touched. For the next hour, Zariah sat with Eli as he showed her his carefully organized world. She didn't push him to make eye contact or interrupt his detailed explanations of his toy collection. Instead, she listened and observed, occasionally asking questions that showed she was truly paying attention. Malachi watched from the doorway, feeling like an outsider in his own home. The easy way Zariah interacted with Eli made his own awkward attempts at fatherhood even more apparent. Eventually, he retreated to his home office, telling himself he had important calls to make. When Zariah knocked on his office door later, he quickly minimized the window on his computer screen. He hadn't been working at all. He'd been researching autism, reading articles he should have read months ago. Eli's having a snack in the kitchen, she said. I thought we should talk about how this arrangement will work. Of course. Have a seat. Malachi gestured to the chair across from his desk, automatically falling into his businessman persona. What did you observe today? Zariah sat down, but leaned forward, not intimidated by his formal tone. First, I want to be clear about something. I'm not here to fix Eli. There's nothing wrong with him that needs fixing. Malachi frowned. He can barely function in public. He hardly speaks to me. His mother, he stopped himself. His mother what? Zariah pressed. Malachi's jaw tightened. Vanessa said I wasn't capable of handling him, that I'd fail as a father just like I failed as a husband. And is that why you're doing this? To prove her wrong? The directness of the question caught him off guard. No one spoke to Malachi Whitmore this way. I'm doing this because my son deserves better than what I've been able to give him, he finally said. Zariah's expression softened. That's a good start. A start. Mr. Whitmore, Eli doesn't need expensive therapies and special schools nearly as much as he needs a father who understands him. Have you read anything about autism since his diagnosis? The research articles on his computer screen flashed in his mind. I hired experts to explain it to me. But did you listen? Did you try to understand what the world feels like for him? Malachi felt a flash of anger. You've known my son for exactly 4 days. I've been trying to connect with him his entire life. Trying how? Zariah challenged. By buying him things? By hiring people to deal with him while you work? When was the last time you just sat with him and entered his world without trying to pull him into yours? The accusation hung in the air between them. Malachi opened his mouth to fire back a response, but no words came. She was right, and they both knew it. I don't know how, he admitted finally, the words barely audible. Zariah hadn't expected this vulnerability from the imposing billionaire. Her expression softened further. That's what I'm here for, she said gently. To help you learn how. The tension in the room shifted. For a moment, they were an employer and employee, billionaire and waitress. Just two people concerned about a little boy. Zariah? Eli's voice called from the hallway. I finished my apple slices. Coming, Eli, she answered, standing up. Before leaving, she turned back to Malachi. Why don't you join us? We were going to look at his book collection next. I have calls to make, he said automatically. Zariah raised an eyebrow. Do you? Or is that just easier than trying? Without waiting for his response, she left the office. Malachi sat there for a long moment, her words echoing in his mind. Finally, he stood up and followed her. Over the next 2 weeks, Zariah came to the penthouse 3 times a week as agreed. Each visit followed a similar pattern. She would spend time with Eli, drawing him out of his shell little by little, while Malachi observed from a distance, unsure how to participate. But on her 6th visit, something changed. Zariah arrived to find Eli in the middle of a meltdown, screaming on the floor of the living room, while Malachi stood helplessly nearby. What happened? She asked, rushing to Eli's side, but not touching him. I don't know, Malachi said, his voice strained. Nina called in sick. I tried to help him get dressed, but he kept saying his clothes felt wrong. I thought I was doing everything you showed me, but then he just exploded. Zariah knelt near Eli, not too close. Eli, she said calmly, I'm going to count backward from 10, and with each number, things will get a little easier. 10, 9. By the time she reached 1, Eli's screams had subsided to whimpers. She gently suggested they find clothes that didn't hurt his skin, and Eli nodded through his tears. The blue shirt, he managed to say. Only the blue shirt. Let's go find it, Zariah suggested, helping him up. In his room, Eli pointed to a specific blue t-shirt in his drawer. This one doesn't scratch. Sensory issues, Zariah explained to Malachi, who hovered in the doorway. Some fabrics feel like sandpaper on his skin. I didn't know, Malachi said, looking stricken. I've never helped him dress before. Nina always handles it. Maybe it's time you started learning these things, Zariah said, not unkindly. After Eli was dressed in his blue shirt and comfortable pants, his mood improved dramatically. Zariah suggested they all go to the building's private garden, thinking some fresh air might help. In the elevator, Eli stood between them, not touching either one, but clearly more relaxed. You're good with him, Malachi said quietly to Zariah. Better than anyone I've seen. I've had practice, she replied, and I'm not afraid of his emotions. What does that mean? It means, she said carefully, that when Eli has a meltdown, you look terrified. Not of him, but for him. You want to fix it immediately because you can't stand to see him struggle. But sometimes he needs to feel those big emotions and know that you'll still be there when the storm passes. The elevator doors opened, and Eli stepped out first, heading straight for a bench near a small fountain, similar to the one at the hotel where they'd first met Zariah. He likes water sounds, Malachi observed. Zariah smiled. You noticed. I'm learning. They sat on the bench, Eli between them, watching the water ripple and splash. Tell me about your brother, Malachi said suddenly. Zariah looked surprised by the personal question. Jamie? He's 14 now. Brilliant with numbers, terrible with people, except me and our mom. He was diagnosed when he was 4, and you became his caretaker? A shadow crossed her face. My mom works 2 jobs. Someone had to be there for him. Is that why you dropped out of college? She stiffened. You had me investigate it? I looked into your background, Malachi admitted. I was curious. About what? Whether I was good enough to be around your son. About who you are, he said simply. You're not what I expected. And what did you expect, Mr. Whitmore? Someone who'd take my money without challenging me. Someone impressed by all this. He gestured vaguely at the luxury surrounding them. Sorry to disappoint, she said dryly. You didn't, he replied, his voice softer than she'd ever heard it. Quite the opposite. Zariah looked away, uncomfortable with the warmth in his gaze. I should go soon. My brother will be home from school. Bring him some time, Malachi suggested. He and Eli might get along. Jamie doesn't do well with new places. Like Eli. She nodded. Like Eli. They fell into a comfortable silence, watching Eli as he focused intently on the patterns of the water. For once, Malachi's phone remained in his pocket, unanswered. How did you learn to understand them so well? He asked after a while. Zariah thought for a moment. I stopped trying to make Jamie fit into my world and started trying to understand his. It's not always easy, but it's always worth it. I want to understand Eli's world, Malachi said quietly. I just don't know if I can. You can, she assured him. You just have to be willing to let go of control. And from what I've seen, Mr. Whitmore, control is pretty important to you. He chuckled. You've noticed. It's hard to miss. Their eyes met, and something shifted between them, a moment of connection that went beyond their professional arrangement. Malachi found himself noticing details about her he'd missed before. The tiny freckle near her left eyebrow, the way she tucked her hair behind her ear when thinking, the quiet confidence in her posture. Eli's voice broke the moment. Can we go back upstairs now? The sun is too bright. Of course, Zariah said, standing quickly. Let's go. In the elevator, Malachi's phone finally demanded attention with a series of urgent beeps. He glanced at the screen and frowned. Problem? Zariah asked. Nothing I can't handle, he replied, but his jaw was tight. Back in the apartment, Eli retreated to his room to organize his books, leaving Malachi and Zariah alone in the living room. I should get going, she said, gathering her purse. Same time on Thursday. Actually, Malachi said, hesitating, I was wondering if you'd join us for dinner tonight. Here, I mean, nothing fancy. Eli seems calmer when you're around. And I thought, I can't, she interrupted. I told you, Jamie will be home from school soon. My mom works evenings. Right, of course. Malachi nodded, trying to hide his disappointment. Another time, perhaps. Zariah studied him for a moment. Mr. Whitmore. Malachi, he corrected. Please. Malachi, she amended, the name feeling strange on her tongue. I appreciate the invitation, but I think we should keep things professional. Is there a reason you're so determined to keep me at a distance? Several, she said honestly. For one, you're my employer. Consultant, he reminded her. Your word, not mine. Fine, you're my client. And you're also, she gestured at the penthouse around them. This isn't my world. And what is your world? Zariah Miles. The personal nature of his questions was throwing her off balance. A small apartment in East Atlanta. 2 jobs to make ends meet. Taking care of my brother and helping my mom pay the bills. Nothing that would make sense to someone like you. Someone like me, he repeated, a hint of bitterness in his tone. You think you have me all figured out, don't you? I think I know your type, she said carefully. And what type is that? The type who's used to getting whatever he wants. The type who thinks money can solve any problem. Is that really what you think of me? Before she could answer, Eli emerged from his room, holding a book. Zariah, can you read this before you go? She welcomed the interruption. Just one story, okay? Then I have to leave. They settled on the couch, Eli sitting close enough to see the pictures, but not quite touching her. Malachi watched from across the room as Zariah read, giving each character a different voice, making his son smile in a way he rarely did. When she finished, Eli asked, Will you read more on Thursday? Absolutely, she promised. We can pick up right where we left off. As she prepared to leave, Malachi walked her to the elevator. Thank you for today, he said, especially this morning with the meltdown. I wouldn't have known what to do. You'll learn, she assured him. Just be patient with yourself. And with him. Zariah, he said as the elevator doors opened. About dinner. My invitation wasn't just about Eli. She looked up at him, suddenly aware of how close they were standing. I know, she said softly. That's why I said no. The elevator doors closed between them, leaving Malachi staring at his own reflection, more unsettled than he cared to admit. When Zariah arrived home, her modest apartment felt especially small after spending hours in Malachi's penthouse. But the familiar sounds of her brother's video game and her mother preparing to leave for her night shift at the hospital grounded her. How was the rich kid? Jamie asked without looking up from his game. Eli, she corrected gently. His name is Eli, and he's a lot like you were at that age. Is his dad still giving you googly eyes? Zariah nearly dropped her purse. What? No, he is not. Mom says he is. Their mother, Elena, emerged from her bedroom in scrubs, her hair pulled back in a neat bun. At 49, She still had the same warm eyes as Zariah, though years of working double shift had etched permanent lines of fatigue around them. "I said no such thing," Elena protested, though her small smile suggested otherwise. "I just mentioned that it was interesting how this billionaire suddenly needs my daughter's help specifically." "It's a job, Mom," Zariah insisted. "Nothing more." Elena hummed skeptically, grabbing her car keys. "There's leftover chicken in the fridge. Make sure Jamie finishes his homework before video games." "Already did it," Jamie called out. "Algebra is boring. They should give us harder stuff." After her mother left, Zariah sat beside her brother on the couch. Despite being 14, Jamie still had moments where he seemed much younger, especially when focused on his games. "How was school?" she asked. "Same as always. Loud, annoying, full of people who think I'm weird." Zariah's heart ached for him. "You're not weird. You're just different." "I know." He paused his game and looked at her, a rare moment of direct eye contact. "Is that what you tell the rich kid too?" "Yes," she admitted. "Because it's true." Jamie seemed to consider this. "His dad, is he nice to him?" "He's trying to be," Zariah said carefully. "He doesn't always know how. Like Dad didn't know how." The question caught her off guard. They rarely spoke of their father, who had walked out shortly after Jamie's diagnosis, claiming he couldn't handle a defective kid. "No," she said firmly. "Eli's dad is nothing like ours. He wants to learn. He's staying." Jamie nodded, satisfied with her answer, and returned to his game. That night, as Zariah prepared for bed, her phone chimed with a text message. It was from Malachi. "Eli asked if you could bring a book about space on Thursday. Apparently, the ones we have aren't accurate enough. Also, thank you again for today. I'm learning. MW." She smiled despite herself and typed back, "I'll bring my brother's astronomy book. It has real NASA photos. Good night, Mr. Whitmore." His response came immediately. "Good night, Zariah." "And it's Malachi, remember?" She put her phone down without replying, trying to ignore the warm feeling his message had triggered. This was just a job, she reminded herself. Nothing more. But as she drifted off to sleep, she couldn't help wondering what it would be like to accept that dinner invitation, to sit across from Malachi Whitmore not as a consultant, but as something else entirely. Across town, in his penthouse, Malachi stood at the windows overlooking the city lights. Eli was asleep, and the apartment was quiet, too quiet. His thoughts kept drifting to Zariah's word from earlier. "You're good with him, better than anyone I've seen." No one had ever looked at him the way she did, like she saw past his wealth and power to something underneath, something he himself wasn't sure existed anymore. His phone rang, breaking the silence. It was his lawyer. "This better be important, David. It's late." "It is," the lawyer replied grimly. "Vanessa's filed for a custody review. She's claiming that Eli's diagnosis means you're not equipped to be his primary caregiver." Malachi's hand tightened around the phone. "She doesn't even visit him. She hasn't called in months. She's also asking about this woman you've hired to work with Eli. Says it's inappropriate to have an unqualified stranger around him." "How does she even know about Zariah?" "You took Eli to a public place, had an incident, and a waitress intervened. People talk, Malachi, especially when it involves someone like you. Handle it," Malachi ordered. "Whatever it takes. I'll try, but you should know, Vanessa seems different this time. More determined." After hanging up, Malachi poured himself a drink, his mind racing. Vanessa had never wanted custody of Eli. Not really. Their divorce had been her idea, her escape from a marriage that had stifled her spirit, as she'd put it. She'd left Eli with Malachi as a final power play, knowing he had no idea how to be a full-time father. So why the sudden interest now? The answer came to him with startling clarity. She'd heard about Zariah, about how Eli was responding to her, and Vanessa couldn't stand the thought of anyone succeeding where she had failed. Malachi downed his drink in one swallow. He'd built an empire by anticipating threats and eliminating them before they could materialize. But this was different. This was his son, and he realized with a jolt this was about Zariah too. The thought of Vanessa digging into Zariah's life, trying to discredit her, made his blood boil. Zariah, with her gentle strength and uncompromising integrity. Zariah, who had shown him more about being a father in 2 weeks than he'd learned in 6 years. Zariah, who had looked at him tonight with an expression that suggested she wanted to say yes to his invitation, even as she was saying no. Malachi pulled out his phone and drafted a text message. "There's something we need to discuss. It's about Eli's mother. Can you come earlier on Thursday?" His finger hovered over the send button. Involving Zariah in his legal battles could drive her away, but not warning her would be worse. Vanessa could blindside her, use her past or her brother against her. Before he could decide, another call came in. The screen displayed a name he hadn't seen in months. Vanessa. Malachi took a deep breath and answered. "It's midnight, Vanessa. What do you want?" "Hello to you too, darling." Her voice purred through the speaker. "I hear you've hired help for our little problem child." "A waitress, Malachi?" "Really? How the mighty have fallen." "What do you want?" he repeated, his voice ice cold. "Just checking on my son. A mother has rights, you know. Rights you've shown no interest in exercising until now." She laughed, the sound as calculated as everything else about her. "Things change. I'm coming to Atlanta next week. I expect to see Eli." "That's not happening." "Oh, it is," she said, her voice hardening. "Unless you want a very public custody battle that will expose just how ill-equipped you are to raise a special needs child. The press would love that story, don't you think? Billionaire tech genius can't handle his own son." Malachi gripped the phone so hard his knuckles turned white. "You don't care about Eli. You never have." "I care about what's mine," she replied. "And I don't like other women playing mommy to my son." "This waitress friend of yours? I'd send her packing if I were you. Before things get complicated." The line went dead before he could respond. Malachi stared at his phone, then at the unsent text to Zariah. With a decisive tap, he sent it, adding, "Be careful. Vanessa can be dangerous when she feels threatened." As he walked to check on Eli, sleeping peacefully for once, Malachi realized just how much had changed in the past few weeks. For the first time in his life, he was more concerned about protecting someone else than protecting himself. Two someone else's, actually, his son and the woman who was teaching him how to be a father. The woman who, he was beginning to suspect, could teach him about much more than that, if he could only convince her to give him a chance. When Zariah arrived at Malachi's penthouse on Thursday morning, she found him pacing the living room, phone pressed to his ear. The moment he saw her, relief washed over his face. "You're here," he said, ending his call abruptly. "Thank you for coming early." "Your message sounded urgent," she replied, setting down her bag. "Where's Eli?" "With Nina in his room. I wanted to talk to you privately first." Malachi gestured toward the couch. "Please sit." Zariah remained standing. "What's going on?" "Your text about Eli's mother being dangerous didn't exactly help me sleep." Malachi ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of frustration she'd never seen from him before. The always composed billionaire looked almost vulnerable. "Vanessa is coming back to Atlanta," he said. "She's demanding to see Eli. Isn't that normal? She is his mother." "Nothing about Vanessa is normal," Malachi replied, his voice hardening. "She hasn't called in months." She barely acknowledged his diagnosis. And now, suddenly she's interested in being a mother again. "People change," Zariah suggested, though her instincts told her there was more to the story. "Not Vanessa. She heard about you, about how you've helped Eli, and she can't stand it." "Me? Why would she care about me?" Malachi met her eyes directly. "Because Eli is responding to you in ways he never did with her, and that threatens her." Zariah took a moment to process this. "So what are you saying? That she's coming back because she's jealous?" "I'm saying she's coming back to cause trouble. She's already filed for a custody review, claiming I'm not equipped to handle Eli's needs." "That's ridiculous. You've been learning so much about how to connect with him." Malachi's expression softened at her defense of him. "Thank you for saying that. But Vanessa will use anything she can against me, including you." "Me? How?" "She'll say I brought an unqualified stranger into Eli's life. She'll dig into your background, your family situation, anything she can use to paint you as inappropriate." Zariah sat down now, her legs suddenly unsteady. "You think she'd go after my brother?" "My mom. I think she'd do whatever it takes to win," Malachi said. sitting beside her. That's why I wanted to warn you. If you want to walk away from this situation, I completely understand. Walk away. Zariah looked genuinely shocked. From Eli? Just because his mother might say mean things about me? It could get ugly, Zariah. I've dealt with ugly before, she said firmly. I'm not abandoning Eli, just when he's starting to trust me. Something flickered in Malachi's eyes. Relief, gratitude, and something deeper. Thank you, he said quietly. That means more than you know. Before she could respond, the elevator doors opened, and Nina emerged with Eli. The boy's face brightened when he saw Zariah. You brought the space book? He asked immediately. Zariah smiled, momentarily setting aside her concerns about Vanessa. I did. My brother said you can borrow it as long as you need. Your brother has autism too, Eli stated matter-of-factly. Like me. That's right, Zariah confirmed, surprised by his directness. How did you know that? Daddy told me, Eli said, glancing at his father. He said that's why you understand me. Zariah looked at Malachi, who seemed almost embarrassed. I hope that was okay to tell him, he said. He was asking about you. It's fine, she assured him, touched that they had discussed her when she wasn't there. I'm happy to answer any questions you have, Eli. The morning passed peacefully as they explored the astronomy book together. Eli was fascinated by the photos of distant galaxies, repeating facts about each planet with perfect recall. Malachi joined them, asking questions and listening intently to his son's explanations. Jupiter has 79 confirmed moons, Eli informed them seriously. That's more than any other planet. That's a lot of moons, Malachi remarked, catching Zariah's eye with a small smile. Saturn has 82, Eli corrected. I was wrong. It's okay to be wrong sometimes, Zariah said gently. That's how we learn. Mom says being wrong is embarrassing, Eli replied, his voice flat. Malachi tensed beside her. Your mother isn't always right, buddy. Eli considered this with remarkable seriousness. Is Mom coming to see me? The question caught them both off guard. Malachi hesitated, and Zariah could see him struggling to find the right words. Yes, he finally said. Next week. Would you like that? Eli didn't answer directly. Instead, he asked, Will Zariah still come when Mom is here? Do you want me to? Zariah asked. Eli nodded firmly. Then I'll be here, she promised, ignoring the worried look Malachi gave her. After Eli went with Nina for lunch, Malachi led Zariah to the balcony where they could speak privately. You don't know what you're signing up for, he warned. Vanessa will see you as competition. I'm not competing with her, Zariah insisted. I'm just trying to help Eli. I know that, but she won't see it that way. Malachi leaned against the railing, looking out over the city. Vanessa and I. Our marriage was a mistake from the beginning. Two ambitious people who thought having a child would somehow fix what was already broken. That never works, Zariah said softly. No, it doesn't. He turned to face her. When Eli was born, I was building my company. 16-hour days, constant travel. Vanessa resented being left with the baby. When he wasn't developing typically, she took it as a personal failure, something she couldn't control or fix. That's not how parenthood works. I know that now, Malachi said. But back then, we were both too proud to admit we needed help. By the time Eli was diagnosed, our marriage was over. Vanessa left, saying she needed to find herself. She left Eli with me because she knew I had no idea how to be a full-time father. That's cruel, Zariah said, unable to hide her anger. It was meant to be, her final revenge for all the times I wasn't there. His voice grew quieter. The irony is, it was the best thing she could have done for me. Being forced to be a father to Eli, it changed me. Or it started to anyway. And then I came along, Zariah said with a small smile. And then you came along, he agreed, his eyes warming as they looked at her. And everything changed even more. The moment hung between them, charged with something neither was ready to name. Zariah broke the silence first. I should check on Eli. Zariah, Malachi said, stopping her with a gentle touch on her arm. Thank you for not walking away. I don't walk away from people who need me, she replied simply. The days passed quickly, and Vanessa's arrival loomed like a storm on the horizon. Zariah continued her sessions with Eli, pretending not to notice how Malachi found more and more reasons to be present during their time together. She told herself it was because he wanted to learn more about connecting with his son, but the way his eyes followed her when he thought she wasn't looking suggested something else entirely. On Friday afternoon, a week after their conversation about Vanessa, Zariah arrived at the penthouse to find Eli and Malachi baking cookies in the kitchen, or trying to. "What's all this?" she asked, taking in the flour-covered countertops and Malachi's surprisingly casual attire. Jeans and a simple gray t-shirt that did nothing to hide his athletic build. "Daddy's teaching me to make cookies," Eli explained. "But the recipe isn't working right. I may have overpromised on my baking skills," Malachi admitted with a sheepish grin. The recipe seemed simple enough. "Here, let me help," Zariah offered, setting down her bag and washing her hands. Together, they salvaged the cookie dough, with Zariah gently guiding both father and son. Eli was precise in his measurements, delighted by the structured steps of the recipe. Malachi was a quick learner, watching Zariah's techniques carefully. "You're good at this," he observed as she showed Eli how to properly shape the cookies. "My mom taught me," she explained. "She said everyone should know how to make at least one thing from scratch." "My mom doesn't cook," Eli said matter-of-factly. "She says that's what restaurants are for." Zariah caught Malachi's eye over Eli's head, and they shared a moment of silent understanding. "Well, now you're learning," she told Eli, "and you can make these whenever you want." As the cookies baked, filling the apartment with a warm, sweet smell, Eli sat at the counter, carefully cleaning each measuring cup and spoon. His methodical approach to the task was soothing to watch. "He seems happy," Zariah said quietly to Malachi as they loaded the dishwasher. "He is," Malachi agreed. "Happier than I've seen him in a long time." He hesitated, then added, "I have you to thank for that." "No," she corrected him. "You did this. You're making the effort to enter his world, because you showed me how." His voice dropped lower, more intimate. "Zariah, The timer on the oven beeped loudly, interrupting whatever he had been about to say. The three of them spent the next hour enjoying the cookies and talking about space, Eli's current obsession. When it was time for Zariah to leave, Malachi insisted on walking her to the elevator. "Vanessa arrives tomorrow," he said once they were alone. "She wants to see Eli in the afternoon. Should I come on Monday instead?" "No," he said quickly. "Please come as scheduled. Eli will need the consistency, especially after seeing her." Zariah nodded. "All right, but Malachi, be careful. Don't let her provoke you into saying or doing something that could be used against you later." "Concerned about me, Ms. Miles?" he asked, a hint of teasing in his voice. "I'm concerned about Eli," she replied, though they both knew it wasn't the whole truth. "Of course." He stepped closer, his voice softening. "Zariah, I want you to know that whatever happens with Vanessa, I'm grateful for everything you've done for us. For both of us." The sincerity in his eyes made her heart beat faster. "It's my job," she said automatically. "Is it just a job to you?" Still, the question hung between them, demanding an honesty she wasn't sure she was ready to give. "I should go," she said instead. "My brother's waiting." Malachi stepped back, disappointment flashing across his face before his usual composed expression returned. "Of course. I'll see you on Monday." As the elevator doors closed, Zariah leaned against the wall, her heart still racing. She was falling for him, for both of them, really. For Eli with his brilliant mind and careful ways, and for Malachi, who was so much more than the cold billionaire she'd first thought him to be. But Vanessa was coming, and with her, complications Zariah wasn't sure she was ready to face. When Zariah arrived home, she found Jamie and her mother arguing in the living room. "What's going on?" she asked, setting down her bag. "Mom says we have to go to Aunt Patricia's tomorrow," Jamie said, clearly upset. "But I don't want to go. She has those stupid yappy dogs, and they never stop barking." Elena Miles looked exhausted. At 49, she carried the weight of supporting her family alone, and it showed in the dark circles under her eyes and the premature gray in her hair. It's just for the afternoon, Jamie, she said patiently. I have to pick up an extra shift at the hospital, and Zariah has plans. I can cancel, Zariah offered immediately. I'll stay with Jamie. No, Elena said firmly. You've been working yourself to the bone between the hotel and this consulting job. You deserve one afternoon to yourself. Zariah had planned to meet her friend Maya for coffee, the first social outing she'd had in months. But Jamie's distress was clear, and she never put herself before her family. Really, Mom, it's fine. I can reschedule with Maya. Jamie looked up hopefully, but Elena shook her head. Absolutely not. I've already called Patricia. Besides, you're seeing that man again on Monday, aren't you? That man has a name, Zariah said, feeling defensive. And yes, I'm going to work with Eli on Monday. Work? Elena repeated skeptically. Is that what the kids are calling it these days? Mom, all I'm saying is, you talk about this Malachi an awful lot for someone who's just a client. Jamie, sensing the tension, retreated to his room, leaving the two women alone. There's nothing going on between me and Malachi Whitmore, Zariah insisted, though even to her own ears, it sounded less convincing than it should have. Elena's expression softened. Would it be so bad if there was? You deserve some happiness, Zariah. Some life of your own. My life is fine the way it is. Is it? When was the last time you did something just for you? When was the last time you let yourself want something? The question hit too close to home, echoing thoughts Zariah had been trying to suppress since the day she met Malachi. He's a billionaire, Mom, she said quietly. Men like that don't end up with women like me. Women like what? Strong? Kind? Beautiful? You know what I mean. He lives in a different world. Elena took her daughter's hands. Maybe he needs your world more than you think. I've seen how you light up when you talk about him and that little boy. Don't close that door before you even look inside. Zariah didn't respond, but her mother's words stayed with her long into the night. The next day, after a pleasant but distracted coffee with Maya, Zariah found herself driving toward Malachi's building without conscious decision. She told herself she just wanted to check on Eli after his visit with Vanessa, but deep down, she knew there was more to it. As she approached the building, she spotted a sleek black Bentley parked out front. A tall, elegant blonde woman in designer sunglasses was climbing into the back seat, her movements sharp with anger. Even from a distance, Zariah knew it had to be Vanessa. Making a split-second decision, Zariah parked her modest sedan and hurried toward the building. The doorman recognized her immediately. Ms. Miles, Mr. Whitmore didn't mention you were coming today. He wasn't expecting me, she admitted. But I need to see him. It's important. The doorman hesitated only briefly before nodding. Go on up. You might need a friendly face right about now. The elevator ride felt longer than usual. Zariah had no plan, no reason to be there except a feeling she couldn't ignore. When the doors opened directly into the penthouse, she found Malachi standing by the windows, his back to her, tension evident in every line of his body. Malachi, she called softly. He turned, surprise and then relief washing over his face. Zariah, what are you doing here? I saw Vanessa leaving. I don't know what I thought, that maybe you might need someone to talk to. He crossed the room to her, his eyes intense. How did you know? Know what? That this is exactly what I needed. To see you. The rawness in his voice made her breath catch. Where's Eli? Napping. The visit was difficult. What happened? Malachi gestured for her to sit, then poured them both a glass of water before joining her on the couch. Vanessa was her usual charming self, he said, his voice laced with sarcasm. She brought Eli an expensive toy he showed no interest in, then got offended when he wouldn't hug her. When he started stimmying, you know, that hand-flapping thing he does when he's anxious, she told him to stop because it looked weird. Zariah felt a surge of protective anger. She said that to him? She doesn't understand his condition. Doesn't want to understand it. Malachi took a sip of water. Then she started asking about you. Where you came from, what your qualifications are. When I told her about your background with your brother, she laughed and said I'd hired some random waitress with a retarded brother to look after our son. Zariah flinched at the slur. She sounds lovely. That's Vanessa, Malachi said grimly, always finding the most hurtful thing to say. What did Eli think of her? He was polite but distant. When she finally left, he asked me if she was coming back tomorrow. When I said no, he looked relieved. Malachi shook his head sadly. What kind of mother makes her own child feel that way? The kind who cares more about herself than anyone else, Zariah said softly. They sat in silence for a moment, the space between them charged with unspoken emotions. She threatened to investigate you, Malachi finally said, to find something she could use to prove you're unfit to be around Eli. Let her try, Zariah replied, surprised by her own boldness. I have nothing to hide. She also said something else. Malachi turned to face her fully. She said I was falling for you, that it was pathetic how a man like me could be so easily manipulated by a pretty face. Zariah's heart pounded in her chest. And what did you say to that? I told her she was right about one thing. His eyes held hers. I am falling for you, Zariah, and it terrifies me. The confession hung in the air between them. Zariah felt as if she were standing on the edge of a cliff, knowing that her next words would either send her falling or pull her back to safety. Malachi, you don't have to say anything, he interrupted. I know this is complicated. I'm your client. I have a custody battle brewing. My son is attached to you. There are 1,000 reasons why this is a bad idea. 1,001, she agreed softly. You forgot the most important one, which is, you're you and I'm me. We come from different worlds. He moved closer, taking her hand in his. I don't care about that. I care about the way you see my son, really see him. I care about how you've taught me to be a better father, a better man. I care about the way my heart races when you walk into a room. Zariah felt tears stinging her eyes. This can't work, Malachi. Vanessa will use it against you. She'll say you hired me because of this. Let her, he said fiercely. I'm tired of living my life according to what others might think or say. Aren't you? The question struck her like a physical blow. How long had she put her own desires last? How many times had she said no to what she wanted because it seemed impractical, impossible? I should go, she whispered, standing abruptly. Eli might wake up, and Malachi stood too, still holding her hand. Zariah, please, just tell me if you feel anything for me at all. If you don't, I'll never mention this again. We can go back to our professional relationship, and I'll respect that boundary completely. She looked up at him, this man who had started as an arrogant billionaire in her eyes and had transformed into something else entirely. A devoted father, a man learning to be vulnerable, a man looking at her now as if she were the answer to a question he'd been asking his whole life. It's not that I don't feel anything, she admitted, her voice barely audible. It's that I feel too much. Something sparked in his eyes. Hope, hunger, determination. Slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, he leaned down toward her. Their lips were inches apart when a small voice broke the moment. Zariah, you came back. They jumped apart like guilty teenagers to find Eli standing in the hallway, rubbing sleep from his eyes. Hi, Eli, Zariah said, her voice unnaturally high. I just stopped by to check on you after your mom's visit. I didn't like it, he said simply. She smells too strong and talks too loud. Malachi cleared his throat. Buddy, why don't you go get that new book you wanted to show Zariah? Eli nodded and padded back to his room, leaving them alone again. I really should go, Zariah said, though everything in her wanted to stay, to finish what they had started. Will you come tomorrow? As planned. Malachi asked, his eyes searching hers. Yes, she promised. For Eli. Just for Eli, he pressed gently. Before she could answer, her phone rang. It was her mother. Mom? What's wrong? Elena's voice was tight with worry. It's Jamie. He got upset at Patricia's. Those dogs were too much for him. He ran off, and we can't find him. He's not answering his phone. I'm on my way, Zariah said immediately. Have you checked the library? Or that park he likes? Patricia's looking at the library now. I just got here from work. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Keep calling him. Zariah ended the call and turned to Malachi. I have to go. It's my brother. He's missing. I heard, Malachi said, concern evident in his voice. Let me help. I can send people to look for him. Just tell me where. No, I can handle it. It's happened before. He gets overwhelmed and needs space. Zariah, Malachi said firmly, let me help you. Please. Something in his tone, the genuine worry, the desire to support her, broke through her resistance. "Okay," she agreed. "But I need to go now." "I'm coming with you," he said, already reaching for his keys. "Nina can stay with Eli. Just let me tell them both what's happening." Before she could protest, he was gone, returning moments later with his wallet and phone. "Eli understands it's an emergency," he explained. "Nina will stay until we get back." Zariah asked, even as she followed him to the elevator. He confirmed, his hand finding hers as the doors closed. "You've been there for us. Now, let me be there for you." As they rode down to the parking garage, their hands remained linked, a connection neither was willing to break. Despite her worry for Jamie, Zariah felt a flutter of something new and fragile taking root in her heart. The possibility that maybe, just maybe, the walls between their worlds weren't as insurmountable as she had believed. Little did she know that Vanessa had not gone far. Parked across the street in her Bentley, she watched through the tinted windows as Malachi and Zariah emerged from the building together, moving with the urgency of shared purpose. Her perfectly manicured nails tapped against the leather steering wheel as she lifted her phone to her ear. "David, it's Vanessa. I need everything you can find on Zariah Miles and her family, especially her brother." Her red lips curved into a cold smile. "I think I just found exactly what I need to get my son back." The evening sun cast long shadows as Malachi drove his sleek black SUV through the streets of East Atlanta, following Zariah's directions. His hands gripped the steering wheel tightly while she made call after call, her voice growing more desperate with each unanswered attempt to reach her brother. "Jamie knows not to wander off," she said, more to herself than to Malachi. "He knows the rules. Has this happened before?" Malachi asked gently. "Once or twice," she admitted. "When things get too overwhelming, he sometimes needs to escape. But he usually goes somewhere familiar. The library, the park with the big oak tree, the comic book store." "We'll find him," Malachi assured her, reaching over to briefly squeeze her hand. They pulled up to Zariah's apartment building, a modest complex that was clean but showing its age. Elena Miles was waiting outside, worry etched across her face. "Any news?" Zariah asked as she jumped out of the car. Elena shook her head, then looked questioningly at Malachi as he approached. "Mom, this is Malachi Whitmore, Eli's father," Zariah explained quickly. "He's here to help." Recognition dawned in Elena's eyes. "The billionaire," she said, without the awe most people showed when meeting him. "Just Malachi today," he replied, extending his hand. "Tell me how I can help find Jamie." Elena studied him briefly before accepting his handshake. "Patricia's checking the library. I've called all his usual places. No one's seen him. I know some people," Malachi said, already pulling out his phone. "I can have a search team here in 20 minutes. "We don't need a search team," Zariah interjected. "This isn't one of your business problems you can throw money at." "Zariah," her mother cautioned. "No, she's right," Malachi said, putting his phone away. "This is your family. What do you think we should do?" The question, sincere and deferential, caught Zariah off guard. She'd expected him to take charge, to override her concerns with his wealth and connections. Instead, he was looking at her with complete trust in her judgment. "There's one place we haven't checked," she said after a moment. "The Science Center. It closed an hour ago, but sometimes Jamie sits on the bench across from it when he's upset. He says looking at the building calms him down because it's perfectly symmetrical." "Let's go there," Malachi suggested. "You two go," Elena said. "I'll stay here in case he comes home." The drive to the Science Center was quiet, the tension in the car palpable. As they approached the modern glass building, Zariah scanned the area anxiously. "There!" she suddenly exclaimed, pointing to a bench across the street. A lanky teenage boy sat hunched over, headphones covering his ears, rocking slightly back and forth. Malachi parked quickly, but placed a gentle hand on Zariah's arm before she could rush out. "Let me wait here," he suggested. "He doesn't know me. It might be easier if you approach him alone." Zariah nodded gratefully and hurried across the street. Malachi watched through the windshield as she approached her brother carefully, speaking softly. "The boy, Jamie, didn't look up immediately, but when he did, Malachi could see the family resemblance in his features. After a brief conversation, Zariah sat beside Jamie on the bench, not touching him, but clearly comforting him. Malachi was struck by the care and patience she showed, the same qualities that had drawn him to her when she'd calmed Eli that first day. 10 minutes passed before Zariah and Jamie walked back to the car. She opened the back door for her brother, who slid in without making eye contact. "Jamie, this is Malachi," Zariah said as she got into the passenger seat. "He helped me find you." "Hello," Jamie mumbled, his eyes fixed on his hands. "It's nice to meet you, Jamie," Malachi replied, keeping his voice calm and even. "Zariah has told me a lot about you. Are you really a billionaire?" Jamie asked suddenly, his gaze flicking briefly to the rearview mirror. "I am," Malachi confirmed. "Do you have a private jet?" "Jamie," Zariah warned. "It's fine," Malachi assured her with a small smile. "Yes, I do have a jet. Is it aerodynamically efficient?" Jamie pressed. "Because most private jets have terrible fuel economy compared to commercial airliners when calculated per passenger mile." Malachi chuckled. "You're absolutely right. It's a terrible waste of resources. I should probably use it less." Zariah turned to look at him, surprise evident on her face. Most people either got uncomfortable with Jamie's direct questions or patronized him. Malachi had done neither. The drive back to Zariah's apartment was filled with Jamie's detailed analysis of aircraft efficiency, with Malachi asking thoughtful questions that showed he was genuinely listening. By the time they arrived, Jamie seemed much calmer. Elena was waiting anxiously outside. When she saw Jamie, relief washed over her face. "Thank God," she murmured, wrapping her arms around herself rather than hugging her son, understanding his aversion to unexpected touch. "I'm sorry, Mom," Jamie said quietly. "The dogs wouldn't stop barking, and Aunt Patricia kept asking me questions without waiting for answers." "It's okay, honey," Elena assured him. "I'm just glad you're safe. Can I go inside now? I need to organize my rock collection." Elena nodded, and Jamie hurried inside without another word. "Thank you," she said to Malachi, "for helping find him." "I didn't do anything," he replied honestly. "It was all Zariah. Still, thank you for being there for her." Elena's gaze was direct and assessing. Not many men in your position would have dropped everything to help search for a teenager they've never met. Before Malachi could respond, his phone rang. He glanced at the screen and frowned. "Excuse me, I need to take this. It's my lawyer." He stepped away to answer, leaving Zariah and her mother alone. "He's not what I expected," Elena admitted. "He's full of surprises," Zariah agreed, watching as Malachi paced a few yards away, his expression growing more serious with each passing moment. When he returned, his face was grim. "That was David, my attorney. Vanessa's made her move." "What does that mean?" Zariah asked, a chill running down her spine. "She's filed an emergency petition for temporary custody, claiming I've created an unsafe environment for Eli by bringing an unstable individual into his life." His eyes met Zariah's. "She's talking about you." "Me? How am I unstable?" "She's claiming your family situation, specifically your brother's condition and your history of dropping out of college to care for him, makes you emotionally compromised and unfit to be around Eli." Zariah felt as if she'd been slapped. "She's using Jamie against me?" "Against you? It gets worse," Malachi continued, his voice tight with controlled anger. "Somehow she found out about today, about Jamie going missing. She's using it as evidence that your family is in crisis and that your involvement with Eli is inappropriate and potentially harmful." "How could she possibly know about today?" Elena asked, bewildered. "She must have had someone watching us," Malachi realized. "When we left my building together." "This is my fault," Zariah whispered, wrapping her arms around herself. "If I hadn't gotten involved with Eli, with you, none of this would be happening." "No," Malachi said firmly, stepping closer to her. "This is Vanessa trying to control a situation she doesn't understand. This isn't your fault, Zariah." "What happens now?" Elena asked. "There's a hearing scheduled for Monday morning. The judge will decide whether to grant Vanessa temporary custody while the full case is reviewed." "She can't win," Zariah insisted. "Eli needs you. He's finally connecting with you." "I know. Malachi said grimly. And I'm not giving up without a fight. As the words left his mouth, a sleek black Bentley pulled up to the curb. The back door opened, and Vanessa Whitmore emerged, tall, blonde, and impeccably dressed in a designer suit that probably cost more than Zariah made in 3 months. "Well, isn't this cozy?" she drawled, her gaze sweeping dismissively over the modest apartment building. The billionaire slumming it with the help. "What are you doing here, Vanessa?" Malachi demanded, instinctively moving to stand between her and Zariah. "I came to see what all the fuss was about," Vanessa replied, her predatory gaze fixing on Zariah. "So you're the waitress who's trying to play mommy to my son." "I'm not trying to be anyone's mother," Zariah said, stepping forward. "I'm just helping Eli connect with his father." "How noble," Vanessa mocked. "And how convenient that this help comes with access to one of Atlanta's wealthiest men." "That's enough," Malachi warned. "No, I don't think it is." Vanessa's perfectly painted lips curved into a cruel smile. "Did you tell her what the judge said when I called him this afternoon? Judge Phillips. You remember him, don't you, Malachi? From the Riverside Club?" Malachi's jaw tightened. "What are you talking about?" "I had a very enlightening conversation with him about our situation, about how my poor son is being exposed to—" She glanced meaningfully at Zariah. "Undesirable influences." "You can't intimidate a judge," Elena spoke up, her voice steady despite the tension. "That's illegal." Vanessa laughed, the sound like breaking glass. "Oh, honey, you really don't understand how the world works, do you? Money talks. Connections matter. And your daughter and her unstable little brother don't stand a chance against what I can bring to bear." "Leave my brother out of this," Zariah said, her voice shaking with anger. "He has nothing to do with Eli." "On the contrary," Vanessa countered smoothly, "your brother's condition and your family's inability to properly manage it speaks directly to your fitness to be around my son. After all, if you can't keep your own brother from running away, how can you be trusted with Eli's well-being?" "That's it," Malachi snapped, stepping forward. "Get back in your car and leave, Vanessa. Now." "Or what?" she challenged. "You'll make a scene in this charming little neighborhood? Think of the headlines, darling. Billionaire brawls in East Atlanta projects. Not exactly the image you want to project in the middle of a custody battle, is it?" Before Malachi could respond, the apartment building's door opened and Jamie appeared. He looked confused by the gathering of people. "Zariah? Mom? Is everything okay?" Vanessa's eyes lit up with malicious interest. "And this must be the troubled brother. Hello, Jamie. I'm Vanessa Whitmore." Jamie looked at her uncertainly. "I don't know you." "No, but I know all about you," Vanessa replied, her voice falsely sweet. "About your special needs. About how you run away when things get too difficult." "Stop it," Zariah demanded, moving to stand beside her brother protectively. "Why?" Vanessa asked innocently. "I'm just stating facts. Facts that the judge will hear on Monday when I explain why your influence is dangerous for my son." Jamie looked increasingly distressed, his hands beginning to flap at his sides, his self-soothing mechanism when anxiety overwhelmed him. "Jamie, go back inside," Elena said gently. "Everything's fine." "It's not fine," Jamie replied, his voice rising. "She's saying bad things. She's hurting Zariah." "Yes, listen to your mother, Jamie," Vanessa taunted. "Run away again. That's what you do best, isn't it?" What happened next surprised everyone. It wasn't Zariah or Elena who responded to Vanessa's cruelty. It was Malachi. "Enough," he roared, his voice carrying such authority that even Vanessa took a step back. "You want to attack someone, Vanessa? Attack me. I'm the one who filed for divorce. I'm the one who's been raising our son while you've been finding yourself in Europe. But don't you dare come here and attack this family. A family that has shown Eli more genuine love and understanding in a few weeks than you have in his entire life." Vanessa's perfect composure cracked. "How dare you?" "No. How dare you?" Malachi interrupted. "You don't care about Eli. You never have. This isn't about his welfare. It's about your wounded pride. You can't stand that he's connecting with someone else, that he's happy without you. He's my son. Then start acting like his mother," Malachi challenged. "Learn about his condition. Understand his needs. Put him first for once in your life." You have no right to judge me, Vanessa hissed. You were never there. Always working, building your precious company. You're right, Malachi admitted, his voice softening. I wasn't there enough. I made mistakes, we both did. But I'm trying to be better now. I'm learning to be the father Eli deserves. He turned to Zariah, taking her hand in his. And that's thanks to Zariah. She showed me how to connect with our son in ways I never could before. She's not the problem here, Vanessa. She's been the solution. Vanessa's gaze dropped to their joined hands, her expression hardening. Well, isn't this touching? The billionaire and the waitress, united by their love for my broken child. He's not broken, Jamie said suddenly, his voice clear and strong despite his anxiety. He's just different. Like me. Everyone turned to look at the teenager, who was staring directly at Vanessa with surprising intensity. What did you say? Vanessa asked, taken aback. Eli isn't broken, Jamie repeated firmly. He sees the world differently. His brain works differently. That doesn't make him less. It makes him who he is. Zariah squeezed her brother's hand, pride swelling in her chest. Jamie's right. Eli is perfect exactly as he is. He doesn't need fixing. He needs understanding. And love, Malachi added quietly. Unconditional love. Something flickered in Vanessa's eyes, perhaps a moment of self-awareness, quickly buried beneath her practiced veneer of confidence. This changes nothing. I'll see you in court on Monday, Malachi, and I will win. With that, she turned and climbed back into her Bentley, slamming the door behind her. As the car pulled away, Jamie turned to Zariah. I don't like her. She's loud inside, even when she's being quiet. Zariah hugged her brother gently. You were amazing, Jamie. Yes, he was, Malachi agreed, genuine admiration in his voice. Thank you, Jamie. The teenager ducked his head, uncomfortable with the praise, but clearly pleased. Can I go back inside now? I need to finish organizing my rocks. Of course, Elena said, giving Zariah a meaningful look before following her son into the building. Left alone, Malachi and Zariah stood in silence for a moment, their hands still intertwined. I'm sorry, they both said simultaneously, then laughed softly at the coincidence. You first, Zariah offered. I'm sorry you got dragged into this mess, Malachi said, his thumb tracing circles on the back of her hand. Vanessa is, well, you saw. I'm sorry I complicated things for you and Eli, Zariah replied. Maybe it would be better if I stepped back until after the hearing. No, Malachi said firmly. That's exactly what Vanessa wants. She's trying to isolate us, to undo all the progress Eli has made. I won't let her win, Zariah. Not this time. But what if she does? What if the judge gives her temporary custody? Then we fight. Together. He stepped closer, his free hand coming up to cup her cheek. If you wanted, that is. Zariah looked up at him. At this man who had started as an arrogant billionaire in her eyes and had transformed into someone she could no longer imagine her life without. I'm scared, she admitted. Not of Vanessa, but of us. Of wanting something this much. I'm scared too, Malachi confessed, surprising her. I've spent my whole life in control, certain of every move. But with you, with Eli, I'm learning that the best things in life can't be controlled. They have to be embraced, uncertainties and all. When did you get so wise? She asked with a small smile. I had a good teacher, he replied, his gaze warm as it held hers. This time, when he leaned down toward her, there was no interruption. Their lips met in a kiss that felt like coming home, tender yet passionate, an acknowledgement of all they'd been through and a promise of what might lie ahead. When they finally broke apart, Zariah rested her forehead against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. What happens now? She whispered. Now, Malachi said, tilting her chin up gently, we prepare for Monday. And no matter what happens in that courtroom, we face it together. Monday morning arrived with a cold drizzle that matched the somber mood as Malachi, his attorney David, and Zariah walked into the courthouse. They had agreed that Zariah should be present, not hiding away as if she had something to be ashamed of. Vanessa was already there with her own high-powered legal team, looking immaculate in a conservative navy suit that screamed concerned mother rather than her usual fashion-forward style. "Remember," David whispered to Malachi, "let me do the talking. Judge Phillips is traditional, but he's fair. Don't let Vanessa provoke you." Malachi nodded, reaching for Zariah's hand and giving it a reassuring squeeze. As they took their seats, the courtroom door opened once more. To everyone's surprise, Elena Miles entered, followed by Jamie. They quietly took seats in the back row. "What are they doing here?" Malachi whispered to Zariah. "I have no idea," she replied truthfully. "I told them to stay home." Before they could speculate further, the bailiff called the court to order, and Judge Phillips entered, a distinguished older man with silver hair and piercing blue eyes. The hearing began with Vanessa's attorney presenting their case, that Malachi had created an unstable environment for Eli by bringing in an unqualified woman with family issues of her own. They painted Zariah as an opportunist and her family as troubled, using Jamie's recent episode as evidence. Throughout the presentation, Zariah felt Malachi's hand tighten around hers, his jaw clenched with restraint. When it was their turn, David methodically dismantled Vanessa's arguments, presenting evidence of Eli's progress under Zariah's guidance and Malachi's increased involvement in his son's life. He submitted reports from Eli's therapist, noting the positive changes and highlighted Vanessa's prolonged absences from her son's life. As David concluded, Judge Phillips removed his glasses and looked directly at Vanessa. "Mrs. Whitmore, while your concern for your son is admirable, I find the timing of it suspect. According to these records, you've had minimal contact with Eli for the past year. Is that correct?" Vanessa shifted uncomfortably. "I've been establishing my interior design business in Europe. It required significant travel." "I see. And during that time, Mr. Whitmore has been Eli's primary caregiver?" "Yes, and under his care, with Ms. Miles' assistance, Eli has shown marked improvement in his communication and emotional regulation." "The reports are biased," Vanessa argued. "That woman has no qualifications to work with special needs children." "Actually," a voice called from the back of the courtroom, "she has more practical experience than most professionals I know." All heads turned to see Elena Miles standing, her posture straight and dignified despite her simple clothes. "Your Honor, I apologize for the interruption, but I felt compelled to speak. My name is Elena Miles, Zariah's mother. I'm also a registered nurse with 20 years of experience, specializing in pediatric care." Judge Phillips regarded her with interest. "Approach the bench, Mrs. Miles." Elena walked forward confidently, stopping before the judge. "Your Honor, I've watched my daughter work with children like Eli for years. She helped raise her brother Jamie, who has autism, and she has a natural gift for connecting with these children that no degree can teach. The progress Eli has made with her isn't an accident or a coincidence. It's the result of genuine care and understanding." "And what about the incident with your son running away?" the judge asked. "Mrs. Whitmore's attorneys have suggested it indicates instability in your home." "My son is 14, Your Honor. He's a teenager navigating a complex world with a neurological difference that makes everyday interactions challenging. Yes, he had a difficult moment, but what family doesn't? What matters is how we responded, with patience, love, and respect for his dignity. And when he needed help, Mr. Whitmore was there too, treating Jamie with the same respect and understanding that my daughter has shown his son." The courtroom was silent as Elena finished speaking. Even Vanessa seemed unable to find a retort. "Thank you, Mrs. Miles," Judge Phillips said thoughtfully. "You may return to your seat." After a brief recess to consider all the evidence, Judge Phillips delivered his ruling. In matters of custody, this court is guided by one principle above all others: the best interest of the child. After reviewing the evidence presented today, I find no compelling reason to disrupt Eli Whitmore's current living arrangement. Mr. Whitmore will retain primary custody, with Mrs. Whitmore granted standard visitation rights. Relief washed over Malachi's face as the judge continued. "Furthermore, I find the attempts to disparage Ms. Miles and her family troubling. There is no evidence that her involvement in Eli's life has been anything but beneficial. The court encourages both parents to focus on their sons' needs rather than their personal grievances. With a final tap of his gavel, the judge ended the hearing. Vanessa stormed out without a word, her legal team scrambling to follow. In the hallway outside the courtroom, Malachi embraced Zariah tightly. "We did it," he whispered against her hair. "We won. Your mother was incredible," Malachi said to Zariah as they approached Elena and Jamie. "I don't know how to thank you both for coming today." "You don't need to thank family," Elena replied simply, the word family hanging meaningfully in the air between them. "I have a question," Jamie announced, looking directly at Malachi. "If you marry my sister, will Eli be my nephew? Because I think I'd be good at being an uncle. I could teach him about rocks and space and mathematics." "Jamie," Zariah gasped, mortified. But Malachi just laughed, a genuine, joyful sound that echoed through the courthouse hallway. "That's getting a bit ahead of things, Jamie. But yes, hypothetically speaking, you would be an excellent uncle to Eli." "Good," Jamie nodded, satisfied. "He needs people who understand him, like I do." As they walked out of the courthouse together, Malachi and Zariah hand in hand, Elena and Jamie a few steps behind, they made an unusual group. The billionaire, the waitress, the nurse, and the teenager with autism. But somehow, they fit together in a way that felt right, like pieces of a puzzle finally finding their proper places. 3 months later, on a sunny Saturday afternoon, Zariah stood in Malachi's, now their penthouse, watching as Eli and Jamie sat together on the balcony, heads bent over a complex Lego structure. The boys had formed an unexpected bond, with Jamie taking his role as almost uncle very seriously. "They look happy," Malachi observed, coming up behind her and wrapping his arms around her waist. "They are happy," she agreed, leaning back against his chest. Who would have thought? So much had changed since that day in court. Zariah had finally completed her psychology degree, with Malachi insisting on paying for her tuition. She'd left her waitressing job to focus on developing a program for children with autism, using her experience with Jamie and Eli as a foundation. Vanessa had returned to Europe after a few half-hearted visits with Eli, seemingly relieved to be freed from the obligations of daily motherhood. She sent expensive gifts on holidays and made occasional video calls, which was probably the best arrangement for everyone involved. Elena had moved into a comfortable new apartment closer to her job, though she still refused most of Malachi's offers to help financially. "Pride runs in the family," Zariah had explained to him with a smile. "What are you thinking about?" Malachi asked now, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Everything," she replied. "How different things were a few months ago. How scared I was to want this. And now," she turned in his arms to face him. "Now I'm not scared anymore. Well, maybe a little, but the good kind of scared, the kind that comes with knowing how much you have to lose because you found something so precious." "I know exactly what you mean," he said softly, reaching into his pocket, "which is why I've been carrying this around for weeks, waiting for the right moment." He pulled out a small velvet box, and Zariah's breath caught in her throat. "Zariah Miles," Malachi said, his voice full of emotion as he opened the box to reveal a stunning but tasteful diamond ring. "You changed everything that afternoon when you knelt beside my son and showed us both what real connection looks like. You taught me how to be a father, how to see the world through Eli's eyes, and how to open my heart again when I thought it was permanently closed. Will you marry me?" Tears filled Zariah's eyes as she looked from the ring to the man holding it. This man who had transformed from an arrogant billionaire to the love of her life, her partner in all things. "Yes," she whispered, her voice catching. "Yes, I'll marry you." As Malachi slipped the ring onto her finger, a small voice called from the balcony. "Did she say yes?" Eli asked, his eyes bright with excitement. "You knew about this?" Zariah asked, laughing through her tears. "Dad said it was a big surprise," Eli replied seriously. "But surprises are hard for me, so he told me yesterday, so I could prepare. He practiced not telling you 14 times, Jamie added helpfully. "I counted." Malachi shrugged sheepishly. "I wanted everyone to be comfortable with the moment. That's something else you taught me. That love doesn't have to look like it does in movies to be real and right." As Eli and Jamie came inside to examine the ring and offer their congratulations, Zariah felt a sense of completion she'd never experienced before. This was her family now, unexpected, unconventional, and absolutely perfect in its imperfection. That evening, as they all sat around the dinner table, Elena had joined them to celebrate the engagement. Zariah looked around at the faces of the people she loved most in the world and marveled at how life could change in an instant. One moment, she had been a waitress serving a difficult customer and his overwhelmed son. The next, she had found her purpose, her partner, and her place in the world. Everything had changed that afternoon, and for that, she would be forever grateful.